Moscow expected a quiet night at 12:47 a.m. Then the heavens split apart. A Ukrainian UAV dropped below the radar's detection range, slow and deliberate, maintaining position just long enough to establish target lock. Moments later, a Russian interceptor climbed sharply and exploded mid-flight, shredding the UAV over the city's peripheral zones. The detonation blazed white through the cloud layer. Glass panes shuddered. Alert sirens came next. Briefly, the capital froze, listening intently. That marked just the initial engagement. Over the next 4 nights, Moscow's defenses detected more than 50 Ukrainian UAVs. Defense systems fired repeatedly, deploying interceptor missiles priced from $600,000 to beyond $1 million apiece to eliminate drones valued at a fraction of those sums. Radar operators remained vigilant. Monitoring stations stayed illuminated continuously. Each defensive strike lit up the night sky, and each burst of light represented expenditure. This wasn't a singular assault designed to terrorize. It was calculated pressure, systematic, unrelenting, and purposeful. To understand how contemporary warfare reaches a capital city without devastating it, subscribe to our channel and continue watching for what unfolds ahead. The initial drones didn't come in formations. They came silently. During the early nights of January 2026, Ukrainian UAVs started emerging over Moscow's western approaches in singles and pairs, maintaining low altitude, reduced speed, and intentional spacing. No dramatic display occurred. No massive swarm materialized. Merely sufficient activity to demand attention. Radar teams identified them belatedly. Warning sirens activated temporarily. Interceptor teams received readiness orders, then stood down, only to receive new alerts moments afterward as another target emerged from a different direction. By night 3, the sequence became undeniable. Over 18 UAVs had been monitored around the capital's perimeter airspace, each requiring verification, clearance, and engagement. Interceptor missiles launched continuously, some exceeding $700,000 per deployment to eliminate targets worth substantially less. The economics were already disadvantageous, and control room personnel recognized it. However, ground damage wasn't the objective. Aerial disruption was the goal. Commercial aviation decelerated as temporary flight restrictions took effect. Detection systems operated ceaselessly. Personnel cycled through prolonged duty periods, their rest calculated in minutes rather than hours. Moscow maintained command. Every drone met interception, yet command no longer came effortlessly. The city wasn't experiencing conventional attack. It was being held vigilant through consecutive nights as pressure steadily accumulated. By night 4, intervals between warnings virtually disappeared. Ukrainian UAVs stopped approaching along a single trajectory. They came in staggered formations, southwest initially, then westward, sometimes separated by mere minutes, precisely coordinated to keep Moscow's aerial defenses continuously engaged. Detection screens remained active. Communication networks stayed open. The defensive apparatus never fully cycled down. Throughout 3 nights, more than 38 UAV detections registered around the capital's outer perimeter. Defense installations responded continuously, expending interceptor missiles valued from $650,000 to $1.2 million per unit. Certain batteries deployed 7 to 9 interceptors nightly, not to prevent penetration, but to eliminate its possibility. Commercial aviation started absorbing consequences. Temporary airspace closures forced continuous flight rerouting and ground delays. Flight schedules deteriorated incrementally, yet those setbacks compounded. No airport facilities sustained damage. No landing strips were hit. The disruption emerged from ambiguity alone. Within the defensive infrastructure, stress built gradually. Detection systems functioned without interruption. Servicing intervals shortened. Personnel rotated under exhaustion, their duty periods extending as nights merged together. Every interception recorded as successful. Still, the expenditure trajectory moved in one direction only. This wasn't escalation for media attention. It was behavioral conditioning through repetition. Moscow's protective barriers still functioned, but now it operated under unrelenting pressure. Consider this question. How many nights can a defensive system maintain perfection? Because the following moment provided that answer not through statistics, but through an explosion above the city. The critical moment arrived shortly past midnight. A lone Ukrainian UAV penetrated the outer airspace at exceptionally low elevation. Its signature small enough to postpone radar identification by crucial seconds. Those seconds proved sufficient. When tracking finally established, the response came instantly. An interceptor missile launched forcefully, ascending rapidly before detonating overhead, above the city's peripheral districts. The explosion flashed brilliant white beneath the cloud ceiling, distinct and unmistakable. Windows vibrated throughout multiple residential areas. The pressure wave traveled beyond any warning siren's reach. This wasn't standard interception procedure. The detonation happened lower than prior engagements, nearer to the city's defensive perimeter, triggering emergency measures across numerous sectors. Minutes afterward, additional targets materialized. 2 more UAVs advancing from different angles, separated by under 4 minutes. Defense batteries fired repeatedly. Before the engagement period concluded, 5 interceptors had been consumed within 12 minutes, each approaching or surpassing $1 million per launch. Wreckage descended harmlessly into designated areas, but the communication had already registered. This was no distant horizon glow. Moscow's sky had transformed into the combat zone. Detection systems stayed fully operational as batteries were loaded at increased velocity. Munition teams worked under urgency, reducing preparation times by approximately 30% below standard readiness protocols. Command facilities documented the incident as successful defense. Internal evaluations revealed different conclusions. Interceptor spending for that solitary night exceeded $6 million, excluding radar operations, emergency aviation management, or workforce exhaustion. Commercial flights paused momentarily, then continued cautiously. Alert tones subsided, yet the subsequent quiet felt altered, charged, incomplete. The protective system had performed, but performed audibly, conspicuously, and at expenditure that could no longer be overlooked. From that evening forward, Moscow stopped merely enduring pressure. In practice, it experienced it immediately, quantified not through ground destruction, but through overhead explosions, consumed resources, and expanding awareness that the sequence had progressed into a different stage. The night following the explosion brought no respite. It brought calculations. Detection systems continued operating uninterrupted. Their cooling periods reduced. Their operational tolerances contracted. What had previously been sporadic defensive stance became perpetual operation. Technology designed for brief surges now faced expectations of indefinite function. According to internal calculations, radar operational time throughout Moscow's defensive perimeter surpassed 92% across a 5-day period, nearly doubling level strategists had projected for sustained preparedness. Interceptor reserves started depleting. Reload sequences intensified. Personnel moved more rapidly, not because protocols required it, but because operational pace permitted no alternative. During the 6 nights after the low-altitude detonation, air defense installations surrounding the capital deployed an estimated 28 to 34 interceptor missiles, each valued from $700,000 to $1.3 million depending on specifications. Total expenditure climbed beyond $30 million, and that figure represented munitions exclusively. Workforce strain emerged rapidly. Duty rotations extended past design parameters as personnel maintained alert status through successive nights. Exhaustion accumulated silently, the most hazardous variety. Decision intervals compressed. Every radar indication required examination. Every spurious contact still needed verification. The apparatus was operational but functioning under increasing resistance. Commercial aviation absorbed its portion of the burden. Continuous alerts activated temporary airspace limitations, diversions, and holding patterns. Each interruption was brief. Collectively, they multiplied. Fuel expenses increased. Flight crews exceeded duty limits. Timetables slipped. Airports needn't close to register impact. Uncertainty sufficed. Official communications highlighted successful interceptions, yet updated totals ceased appearing. The absence of new statistics was significant. It indicated not mastery, but prudence, a reluctance to assign final figures to expenditures still accumulating. The protective barrier hadn't collapsed. It had performed exactly as designed, but it now faced nightly demands without pause, without restoration. And that represented the transformation. The pressure no longer concerned whether Moscow could protect itself. It concerned how long the defense could maintain this operational tempo before maintenance, personnel, and supplies began deteriorating. Not instantaneously, but progressively, imperceptibly, and comprehensively. By January's second week, the sequence was completely established. Ukrainian UAV deployments didn't surge dramatically. They didn't require it. Instead, operational tempo stabilized into consistent rhythm. Sometimes a solitary drone, sometimes 2 or 3 positions sufficiently apart to necessitate discrete engagements. Each detection demanded identical procedures: identification, categorization, authorization, and engagement. Even when a drone presented no immediate danger, the system couldn't disregard it. The shield had to activate each time. Throughout 9 consecutive nights, air defense installations around Moscow recorded an estimated 65 to 75 UAV detections. Interceptor consumption followed closely. Conservative calculations suggested 45 to 50 missiles were deployed during that period. Many priced from $800,000 to $1.4 million individually. Expenditure exceeded $40 million, and that calculation excluded radar operations, aviation disruptions, and personnel support. No structures were destroyed. No monuments were damaged. The harm manifested differently. Missile stockpiles diminished faster than anticipated. Resupply schedules tightened. Batteries cycled through reloads at approximately double their designed operational frequency, compressing servicing timetables and elevating mechanical failure probability. Detection systems operated intensely, running continuously instead of designed intervals. Internal tolerances narrowed. Minor problems that would typically be postponed required immediate resolution. Human stress followed identical patterns. Personnel rotated without genuine recovery. Their vigilance tested through repetition instead of crisis. Extended duty became standard. Decision-making decelerated marginally, insufficient to produce failure, yet sufficient to elevate hazard. This was attrition in its most refined form. Outside the military infrastructure, the city adapted. Alert sirens became routine. Explosions over peripheral areas no longer shocked. Citizens modified behaviors not from damage, but from unpredictability. Flights experienced delays, then further delays. Supply chains absorbed friction. The capital kept functioning, but with mounting resistance. This was Ukraine's chosen battlefield. Not one definitive strike, not defensive collapse, but sustained engagement where inexpensive, replaceable UAVs compelled expensive, irreplaceable countermeasures. Every successful interception still qualified as victory, yet each one complicated the subsequent night. The barrier remained operational, but now confronted time, cost, and sustainability simultaneously. And in conflicts like this, those forces needn't destroy a system completely. They only need to persist. By mid-January 2026, the sequence over Moscow was beyond dispute. The city's air defenses kept intercepting Ukrainian UAVs nightly, and officially the shield held. But success's meaning had quietly transformed. Each interception no longer signified security. It signified another expense incurred, another system stressed, another night consumed by conflict. The harm wasn't quantified in destroyed buildings or burning monuments. It was quantified in tens of millions spent on interceptor missiles within days. It was quantified in detection systems pushed past intended operational cycles, in personnel rotating under fatigue, and in commercial aviation compelled to accommodate repeated uncertainty. Moscow kept functioning, but functioned under pressure that didn't dissipate with dawn. This is how modern conflicts evolve, not through one conclusive strike, but through repetition. Inexpensive UAVs compelled costly responses. Replaceable systems altered the equilibrium against infrastructure built for longevity. Ukraine didn't need to destroy the shield, it only needed to keep it active, and thereby the war shifted inward. For generations, capitals assumed distance provided protection, that conflicts could be contained elsewhere, maintained at peripheries. But when warning sirens sound downtown, when explosions illuminate sky above residential zones, that premise crumbles. Authority becomes contingent, assurance becomes fleeting. The question now isn't whether Moscow can protect itself tonight. It's whether it can sustain protecting itself this way nightly, weekly, without expenditure becoming the damage itself. So what's your perspective on what follows when pressure becomes normalized? Does attrition ultimately compel adaptation, or can a system like this persist indefinitely? Share your perspective in the comments. And to follow how this narrative continues developing, subscribe to our channel and remain with us for the upcoming chapter.